Hey, I'm Stan Gibson, and this is the Inspiration Podcast. Let's get to it. Hey there, and welcome to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. I'm your host, and this is episode number 4. You know, there's plenty of leadership podcasts out there that showcase the highlight reels, the awards, the milestones, and those standing O's. But here we dive into the messy middle, that space where real growth happens. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Each week, I get the pleasure of sitting down with some phenomenal leaders who aren't afraid to pull back the curtain of their journey. We explore that self-doubt that they battled, the resilience they built, and how they found the courage to lead authentically in a world that is asking us and pushing us towards conformity. So, hey, grab a drink, get comfortable. Let's talk and jump into today's honest conversation about what leadership really looks like. And I have one of my favorite people in the world. I've got Fred Wakefield. Fred, welcome to the show, my friend.
Excited to be here. This is fun, Stan. Been looking forward to it, buddy.
Oh, I'll tell you what, for you listeners out here, I don't do a lot of big bios, but, let's just say that this is going to be a fun conversation. Fred, I've known Fred, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we met. And Fred has told me nothing's off limits, so that's going to be great. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we met. We're going to talk a little bit about some of his upbringing, but we're going to talk about his life in the NFL, playing for 8 years, most of it for the Arizona Cardinals, 2 years of it with now it's the Las Vegas Rams, I guess. So
Raiders.
It was Raiders.
Yep.
At the time it was Oakland. And then we're going to talk about, Fred's life after football and, being in business and getting his master's and being the CEO of this company, CXO, thriveCXO. And so he's got this phenomenal story. But hey, you don't want to listen to me. You want to listen to Fred. Fred, let's talk a little bit about how we met, my brother from another mother. And I say that because I'm old enough to be your dad, but I don't really want to go there. That just makes me feel bad. How did we meet, my friend?
This is good stuff. Well, for starters, again, thanks for having me on here. This is fun. And Stan, I knew you were designed for this, but man, just listen to this intro. This is exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this blows up for you and the impact you can have on other people. So it's awesome. Yes. So I actually was doing some consulting and had started working with the University of Illinois, managing donors out here on the West Coast. And this sounds terrible, but that weekend I had to fly to Maui for the Maui Invitational. All I remember is I was a little bit annoyed because my wife and girls were kind of navigating volleyball stuff, and I was having to fly out that morning, and I'm just trying to eat a breakfast burrito, and some guy gives me an ILL, which, we all looking forward to kind of hear the chant back. And I remember being like, it's so early. I, great, right? Well, then we sit down together. Next thing you know, you and I are sitting next to the plane, and it was you who did the ILL. But it was probably the fastest 6-hour flight to Hawaii I've ever had in my entire life. Just remember really hitting it off, having great conversations. Both of us from such small towns and kind of getting into that story. The most memorable moment is when you were sitting there probably about 20 minutes into the flight, like, wait a minute, what's your name? And you're like, oh, good Lord, I know who you are, right? From watching Illinois sports for so many years, but hit it off great. And then just really enjoyed connecting more those next few days. I mean, I know I was supposed to be everything working, but next thing you know, you and I are going to dinner and then meeting up with some other people that next day and just getting to spend time together. And so was looking forward to growing that friendship, which we have over the years, moving back here.
Oh man, I tell you what, yeah, I was afraid you were going to think I was stalking you because, I'm such an Illinois avid just fan. And again, Fred and I, we grew up, didn't know it, obviously, an age difference, but we grew up in small towns, probably about an hour apart. And I can actually remember reading when, the University of Illinois was recruiting Fred. And, we both come from towns, and my town is much, much bigger. I mean, I come from Paxton, which is 4,000 people. Fred, how big is Tuscola?
It was 4,500, I think, when I was there. I have no idea what it is now.
Oh, it is that big. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't realize that, but I do know that, one of the things they're famous for is their football. And I remember when Illinois was recruiting you. I remember, you had, I think, a couple of years of growing into your body. And then it was around your junior and senior year that you really started to make a dent in Illinois athletics. But yeah, that was a fun trip out to the Maui Classic. Illinois was playing in it. And so was Iowa State, which is where my daughter and son-in-law went to school. So I got a double whammy in getting to go see two teams that I enjoy watching play. And you're right, that 6-hour trip went very quick. And unfortunately, we got to know each other, I think, better than we wanted. My wife was just getting the news.
Mhm.
She was diagnosed with cancer at that time, and we were waiting to hear from a doctor and on kind of what the next steps were. And so we land, and Fred is, he's looking to get to the hotel, which happens to be the same hotel we're at. And, I said, "You want to ride?" And he said, "Well, an Uber, I think it was like $140."
It was something ridiculous.
It
Yes. I
was
don't
really
remember the number, but you were like, just hop in with us.
so we got to ride to the airport, which gave us a chance. I think it was a God thing. He really wanted us to get to know each other. And unfortunately, you had to listen to some conversations because the doctors did call while we were on the way to
Mhm.
the hotel. But it gave us a chance to meet that night, meet the next morning, and really become very close. Again, this was 2018. So, God led us here, but let's talk a little bit. Let's start back.
Hang on.
Tell
That was
me,
2018. It was that
yeah,
long
it
ago.
was. It really was. And again,
Jiminy
that's
Christmas. Okay.
I can only measure it because I just remember that's when Sharon was diagnosed. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was crazy. My extrovertedness called you the next morning and said, "Hey, you want to have a drink before we end up finding
Well,
another
and it's a good
hotel?"
thing because Illinois didn't play great the next few days. And so we at least had fun and some camaraderie around it.
We did. And so we have worked a lot together since then, and we'll get into that. But tell me about growing up. You had to kind of grow up a little bit quick from what I remember. I mean, growing
Yep.
up in a small town. Tell me a little bit about that path of growing up in a small town and just some of your family background.
Yeah. So, her parents divorced at an early age, right? So it's me and my brother, who's 3 years younger than I am. We quickly moved to Tuscola. Most of our family's from downstate Illinois, even more downstate than Tuscola. I think most people you talk Illinois, they only know Chicago exists unless we're from back there, right? And so everything's downstate. I grew up in Tuscola, really didn't find my path until high school, right? Was just another kind of kid trying to figure out what was going to happen, helping raise my little brother. And then found football. I mean, it was one of those that all of a sudden my freshman year, I grew quite a bit and made a couple plays in practice. And Stan Winky, who ironically is going to be over here for dinner in Phoenix tomorrow night. So I get to go to dinner with him tomorrow night and his wife, really had an impact, right? And so was able to kind of make some plays. And then football was my outlet, right? Being able to go out there and just, it's hard to say now because you can't say this if you play football now, but I mean, you basically got paid to beat people up. And so just kind of frustrations as a kid growing up and being able to just kind of go and express yourself in that manner was my outlet as kind of a young one growing up in small town and trying to figure out what was next.
So you got this lanky body that people know that can grow into something pretty massive. Tell me about your recruiting. You said,
Mhm.
your parents were divorced and what kind of help did you have? And tell me a little bit about the recruiting because you had several schools coming after you.
I was very blessed. Even though my parents were divorced, my dad came over for almost all my games, football and basketball. He was driving serious miles from Indiana. Mom was right there, right? And so they were always supporting me through this, but you didn't know what recruiting was like. I mean, it wasn't as publicized as it is now. There weren't all these different groups helping you, but Stan was amazing. I mean, he's the one who started putting out videos, reaching out to different groups and just letting them know, like, hey, we've got someone down here. Now, at that point in time, I was about 6'7", and I mean, I think people say I was 215 pounds when I reported to college, but I think I was well under that, probably closer to 190. So it's 6'7", 190. Growing up in Illinois, most people think you're going to go play basketball, right? And instead, football was my kind of passion and what I really enjoyed. And so really kind of got into it. I was not heavily recruited, but I had offers from Iowa, Northwestern, Illinois. But as soon as Illinois offered, I knew that's where I wanted to go. Up the road, major university, and I've never regretted it looking back.
Well, I know I look up to you because you're an inch taller than I am, 6'7", 190. We had almost the exact same dimensions, dude, but your body had the ability to grow a little bigger than that. Tell me what your peak was when you were in the NFL.
So so through college, put on 30 pounds that first year. So I got about 245 as a freshman. And then by the time I left college and went to the pros, I was 285, 290. But then over that time frame and in the pros played offense or played defense to start, then moved to offensive line, and then tight end. And then my peak with the Cardinals, I was like 322. I think I've
40.
shown you that picture of me and my dad next to each other, who's about 6 foot, 200 pounds at that time, is pretty comical still to this day.
Your dad looked like some little toddler, and you're like, I had to really like look at that picture long and hard to say, okay, I can see the face. Okay, that is Fred. Okay, I just have to make
Okay.
sure that is Fred because you've obviously trimmed down.
Oh yeah, it's funny when I talk to people who didn't know me through all these different faces, and they'll see a picture from like high school, or people that know me now, and they saw a picture when I played, and like, it doesn't even look like the same person because your head is just so gigantic. Uh, but yeah, so trimmed down, I got done playing. I'm about 270 now. I was just joking with Casey. 255 will feel better, but it's 6'7". I can at least hide it. So it works out good for me.
You hide it well. So tell me, before we jump into a little bit of, because I want to go through a progression here of college to the NFL into your business career. But tell me a little bit about what's the one thing that you learned most about playing at the University of Illinois? Or is there one person, one coach, or is there anything
Mhm.
that really kind of stands out from a leadership perspective?
I look back at that path through, I mean, everything, even to where I am now. And I've just been very blessed to have very influential and often godly men like step into my life to kind of help shepherd me and lead me along the way. You and I've talked about this quite a bit over the years. I mean, Stan Winky was monumental early on in high school, just kind of really leading into me. I remember he was even going and learning new lifts and training so he could teach me how to do it so I could be ready to go to college and perform. I mean, that's something you don't have a lot of people do, right? And so having him and then going into college and having those different coaches, St. Louis was a big one for me. Passed away a few years ago, unfortunately, after kind of a battle of cancer and just different issues he was dealing with health wise. But just another great foundational person in my transition and growth. And then it just continued and continued to where even after I had retired and came back, just found myself very blessed, kind of having different people, kind of consistently challenging me and pushing me to do different things and kind of grow more and not just be stagnant. And so those types of people kind of pushing me along the way really kind of help create that foundation of like, okay, what's really important, right? And it's something you learn as being an athlete, right? You never stay the same, right? If you stay the same, people are passing you, or you're not really living God's mission for you. And so ultimately, each day is just kind of wake up and how are you going to get a little bit better? I mean, you and I've talked about this. Running into you, God had a plan for that one, right? And so we've connected over the years, and as you were transitioning from your career, you kind of helped me even coach me through some different pieces, right? And so I remember some of those different. What was that? Elephant something place at Chandler Mall was one of the first places we hung out. When we got back, I don't think that restaurant exists anymore. But we're sitting there, we just flat out, it was supposed to be like an hour. I think we sat for like 2.5 hours talking about what was going on and what life looked like and what we were heading with. And just really, really kind of connected over those different time frames and years. And so, yeah, it's important, right? To kind of surround yourself with great people. And like I said, I was just blessed to have these people that seemed like God just kind of put them in my path over those different years.
So you're not only a big dude, you're a smart dude. You at the University of Illinois, you had a pretty good GPA, but who surpassed you on the team?
There's this bum, Josh Whitman, who's now the athletic director. No, I still give him a hard time at times. It was him and another buddy of mine, Mike Gussick, who was a year older than us, or 2 years older than us, maybe. And those guys got all the academic awards because they were all finance majors with 3.9 and 4.0 GPAs when I was a piddly kinesiology major back then. But both really good people, really bright guys. And I mean, Josh is just crushing it. I think I saw he just went and talked to Congress about something the other day. And
Yeah,
so
he did. He did.
talk about a guy who's on a trajectory to really just, I mean, blow things up, and what he's done at the university could make me more excited and proud to become a friend and a teammate. So,
yeah, well, like I say, no malice in taking second place to Josh. He's done great things for the University of Illinois, and I read about his time at Congress, and I think they pretty much he went with 3 other people, and I think Josh was the showstopper. He was the guy that was lobbying basically for a change in college sports, and he's just such a brilliant guy. But I know that I think he played tight end, and the year you did, and again, I think you've got some great relationships there.
well, the best part is Josh was the guy I probably fought the most with on the football field because I was playing defensive end at the time, and some practice and spring ball, especially, we would just go at each other, and it was just brutal because you get sick of seeing the same guy all the time. And so he and I still laugh about getting into fist fights with helmets on, which makes no sense now, right? But when you're angry and you're hot and you're in the second practice in 2 days in full pads, you don't think about it much. But
as far as the college went, you had a good, I mean, I can still remember, again, I watched all the Illinois games. I can remember a few games where, you had some great games, and now it's time to move on. Were you all conference or anything? I mean, where did you stand kind of from a collegiate standpoint?
I have not thought about that in years. I think by my senior year, I ended up first team all conference. I'm just proud of my games against beating Iowa our junior and senior year. And I really enjoy saying that since we have so many Iowa friends, it just makes me more happy to talk about that one. But yeah, I mean, academic All-American. I think I was honorable mention on a couple All-American things by the time I was a senior. But yeah, but then, I was supposed to go to the NFL, was draft projected like a third or fourth round pick, and just ended up not working out the way it was supposed to. So
wow. So that's where I wanted
yeah.
to go with this, Fred. So,
Mhm.
and I did not realize that for as long as I've known you, I didn't know that you were projected third, fourth. And
Mhm.
what was it like that time of just the rounds were going by and by and by and your name wasn't called? What was that like?
Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know. People told me end of first day, beginning of second, which back then was on 2 days. And so I think the third round ended the first day, fourth, five, six, and seven all went the next day. Didn't really have anticipation to go in the third round. Like I said, it's all just so different now. You basically, if anybody's going to slide, you're sliding like 6 spots, right? I mean, they pretty much have an idea of most of these ranges and what's going
Yeah.
on with all these different groups. So, got done, had played a ton over those years, had a really good career in college, or, bigger guy. I'd never really found out kind of what happened and how I slid, but it all happened for God's plan, obviously. But was supposed to be third or fourth round pick. Fourth round ends. I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. We're getting into this fifth round. And at the time, my wife and I were expecting our first child. And it was just, again, just lots of things going through your head. Like, okay, now I need to find a freaking team. I mean, you get into that sixth round, that seventh round, starts getting a little sweatier. But then the seventh round, all of a sudden, like my phone was ringing like crazy. My agents were calling. And so we were kind of getting to that point where in that seventh round, we were hoping I wouldn't get picked up somewhere, because then you go
Right.
pick where you're going to go.
Right.
We were sitting at my mom's house in Tuscola. I remember that she had this giant stinking lazy boy chair because I was so large that I was sitting in this chair just watching all this, being like, what is going on? I had some really, really great agents though. So then once I didn't get drafted, they were just all over the phones, right? Talking to me, talking to these different groups. Actually had, I think it was the Bengals or the Browns, I don't remember which, calling me. They were actually the first ones when we moved to offense out of college. Like, hey, we want to bring you, we want to make you a tackler guard. We want to do this right away. And I'm like, this is nuts. No, I need to support my family. I'm going to go as a defensive lineman. That's what I know. And so then we got talking about the Cardinals kind of had a very unique situation to where they brought in a couple veteran people. They had drafted 3 or 4 guys, but then their top player, Andre Wadsworth, was out with an injury and they weren't sure if he was going to come back. And so my agents were able to identify that and say like, hey, this is going to be a really good opportunity for you. Why don't you go there? And tiny signing bonus. I think it was a couple grand, right? Which at that point in time, we were thinking going to the third or fourth round was painful. So signed with them and then kind of ended up going through the grind that year, right? But ended up being a great choice because I ended up spending 6 years there in my career, and really enjoyed my time with the Cardinals, and it ended up playing out how it was supposed to.
So that's interesting because when you go as a free agent, I imagine there's got to be 100 and some people there at camp. And what's their limit? Like they keep 55 or something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember how many showed up. I feel like it was closer to 80 something in the pros, but then a roster was 53 back then 8 practice squad, right? So you show up out of the gate like, God, just give me a practice squad so I can stick around. I joke with people a lot of times. I showed up that first couple days in actual camp because you went to like OTAs and rookie mini camp and all these things through the off season. We're out there trading and doing things, but you don't really know what's going on until you show up to camp in the fall. And I remember showing up to camp in the fall and I'm like, I am 4th string with 4 other dudes, right? And I'm like, this is crazy. And because a bunch of undrafted people or free agents that were brought in. And so then you just get into the grind. I mean, you're trying to prove yourself in each drill, each rep, every time you get a chance to get in there with an actual team, just trying to make plays, right? And so you couldn't think much of past what was just going on in the day. And oh yeah, by the way, that's when we had like real practices in the NFL, not like what they do now. And so you're basically hitting in the morning, hitting in the evening, hitting in the morning, afternoon off. It was just constant reps, constant banging. But looking back at it, how they do it now would be really hard for free agents to make a team. Because you had so many more reps and so many more opportunities in that older model, but it laid out great for me to be able to kind of get out there, actually show that I can play and make plays. Cause that's ultimately what they're looking for in the NFL. It's like, hey, everybody can fill a gap, but can you actually make plays and get the job?
Yeah. So there's obviously, days where you have to go look at your locker and see if you get that note to turn in your playbook. I don't know if that's just in the movies or if they really do that. But that had to be pretty nerve-wracking, because again, you want to make a living for your family.
Mhm.
Was there anybody that was instrumental during that time? Anybody that kinda kept you up when things looked a little grim? Anybody that you really kind of leaned on?
Well, two people. Casey was every night it was a phone call being like, "Man, this is crazy. Don't know what I'm going through." And I
And
mean,
just so
and
you know,
sh
Casey's his wife that he obviously married up like I did as well.
well, for
So
sure,
I just
yeah,
want to make sure that they know that yeah, Casey's your wife and just a wonderful foundation for you. But go ahead.
1000%. I mean, the thing I have not alluded to is all these great men that have leaned into my life over the years. Like she has been the foundation rock through all of it. We'll jump backwards. So she and I've been together since high school, juniors in high school. I've known each other since third grade. And she's been through all of this. I mean, I joked that I went to the NFL and she's like, wait, we're doing what? She thought we were done after college football. And so she was like, here we go. Right. And so having to listen to those phone calls every stinking night, going through like, okay, what's going to happen? Where are we at? What's next? It's different, right? It's different now than it was back then with different people and how they kind of manage rosters and when they do cuts. But in those first like 3 or 4 weeks of camp, you're not even thinking about getting cut, right? Because they're not letting people go. It's more just like, how do I get reps and how do I get singing and what has to happen and where can I make plays and so mine was just always like lean into the details. And so I was watching more film in the playbook and so I wasn't going to make any mental errors because that's obviously just pull your ass out immediately. The other one is like LeVar Woods and I, who is like now a coach at Iowa. We got really, really tight over those years. So we were both undrafted free agents out of the Big Ten, and really both kind of hit it off. We laughed because Van Bosch at that point in time was a good friend of ours, or still is, but he was the second round guy, so he's safe. And so we came out of camp and we both moved in with him, and we're hanging out in his pool while he's chilling, just kind of taking this time. We're like, all right, if this guy gets cut and this guy gets cut, then that opens a spot for you. And I mean, it's just crazy thinking back to kind of how you're just trying to figure out to get that edge in each of those different moments so you can get a chance.
Wow. So I can only imagine when you found out you made the team.
So, first off, that day is sweaty. And old hard knocks where like they go around and they're leaving things in your locker and there's the person they call the reaper. We didn't call him the reaper. I don't even remember what term we used for him back then. You're basically sitting there not making eye contact. I mean, in the old Cardinals locker room, you'd basically be sitting here, and if I'm looking into my locker, just sitting there being like, oh, don't come talk to me, don't come talk to me, don't come talk to me. It was crazy because they had a veteran guy, Brad Otis, who had been in the league for I think 8 or 9 years, and he'd been starting all through camp, and they'd actually, I mean, they saw something. They released him that day. And as soon as I saw that he got released, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in the team. Right. Because I mean, that was a big move to make to release a guy to keep a free agent. And then all of a sudden, the guy who walked around and was the one cutting everybody, he's like, hey, congratulations, man. You crushed camp. They're excited to have you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And then sure enough, so then I'm looking at LeVar transfer and I'm like, is he good? Is he safe? And when he was good, I think we celebrated by going to Chili's is what we did back then because we still were both undrafted free agents who hadn't had a paycheck yet, right? And so I don't remember all of my football career vividly, right? But there are moments, and that is one that I can still picture walking out and calling Casey and just being like, finally, right? But then you just go back to the grind because you're proving yourself every week and trying to get on the field and make plays. And I mean, I still joke with her that a year later, I ended up starting. I played in every single game that rookie year and started in probably 8 or 9 games out of a 16-game season, which is unheard of for a free agent.
Right.
The next year, I was the starter in camp and started through that whole season, got re-upped and signed a new contract. I was still worried about making the team the next year, right? I mean, which hindsight in 2020 makes no sense. But it's just how I was always designed. And then it got more and more crazy as I changed positions over the years and kept trying to figure out making your mark.
Has fear driven you, Fred, in general? And let me ask that a different way. Fear of what?
It's funny. So you and I started that conversation, which I always joke when I come back after having a serious morning conversation with Stan that he always gets my brain going. And I don't know if it's always a good thing or bad thing because I need to work at times too. But every Friday, I started thinking about this a lot. And I think one of the things growing up with like divorced parents and then living in a career for so long where I didn't have control is this fear of not having control. Right. And it's this consistent battle to like, okay, what do I just trust God with, and what do I need to control it? And basically, I know that what I should be saying is God can control it all if I kind of lean in more. But there's an element, I think that's what's been a driver for me for so many years, right? And so, I mean, you think about when I was playing, it was, all right, Denny Green comes in. All right, what's this look like? Well, out of the gate, he announces, hey, I should have been the starter the year before. He's excited me as a DM. Well, then next thing you know, he's talking about moving offensive line. And I'm like, I don't know what the heck that even means. Right. And so obviously then it's like, hey, if you make a decision, everybody's like, well, you agreed to go do it. What are you going to say? No. And then get cut the next day. That makes no sense. And so you have no control of kind of what's going on and kind of where you sit. And I mean, all you can control is that day-to-day grind that you went through. And so I just leaned into that super heavy over those years. It was like, all right, if this is what I'm supposed to do, what do I have to do today to figure this out? And so in 2000 and I don't know if it was like 4 or 5, whatever year Denny Green came in. I mean, I just remember I had like a minor stress fracture, was going to be out for a few weeks. He's like, I'm going to take this time and basically redshirt you. Right. And so I'm like, what's the heck does that mean? He goes, we're going to move you to offensive line. I'm like, all right, here we go. Like, I thought this was a joke the past 6 months when you've been making comments like this. I didn't know you're actually serious. Went talked to Casey and she's like, what? And so then it turned into a couple days of shock. And the next thing I'm sitting in an offensive meeting room, like, okay, what do I have to do to learn this? And it was kind of chaos for about a month. And then I was like, all right, this is just like learning anything else. But then you have to change your body and how you train and what you eat. I mean, that's when I got heavy and was eating like a psycho. It was just a matter of kind of taking each day to figure out, hey, this is what I control this day. This is what I can control this day. And I still try to lean into that today, even though it's probably something I struggle with consistently.
You know, it's funny because I always told you, if you ever write a book, which I think you should, it needs to be called Both Sides of the Ball. Because to go from defense to offense with the schemes and with the complexity of the NFL, as we've already identified, you're a pretty smart dude. I mean, you were blessed with, some good processing skills. That had to be amazing. I mean, like you said, and I've never heard of you put it like you just did, that you had to change your diet, you had to change your mentality, you had to change your body, you had to change everything, didn't you?
Yeah, it's funny. So I had a trainer that I worked with. I was fortunate. The guys that I trained with the combine, actually, they flew to Pittsburgh to train a group of us. They actually were based out of Phoenix. So in the off seasons, I would go train with those guys. And as soon as I heard this was going to happen, I got on the call with Tom, who was kind of the main trainer. And I'm like, hey, this is going to happen. He's like, oh, this could be fun. And so immediately he changed how I was lifting, what I was doing, training. I went to a nutritionist and I'm like, hey, what do I need to be taking? And then it was just eating so many meals, right? And so that part was crazy. But the interesting part I look back is everybody thinks the harder part would have been learning all the plays and playbooks. But what you eventually learn is even in the NFL, everything's in a system, right? And as long as you're not just learning plays and you learn the system, it wasn't that complicated. And so the craziest year was probably my last year playing in Oakland. And when I was in Oakland, I went in there. Well, the funny part, so when they brought me in as a free agent that year, in free agency, I went and did a tryout basically for them. And they had both coordinators, offense and defense. They had offensive line coach, defensive line coach, tight end coach. And so I did a little bit of every single drill out there. And I called my agent. I'm like, is that normal? He's like, no, this is weird. I don't know what they're going to do. And basically, I thought they wanted to try me out and I was going to fly home, but then they gave me an offer right away. And I'm like, interesting. So then went in as a tight end that year, got injured, missing most of the season or all that season. But then that next year, I'm getting ready to come back and start playing. Felt better than ever. Great shape. Al had an idea like, hey, our defense was terrible. We want to move Fred back to defense. At this point, I've been on offense for 5 years. And I'm like, all right, interesting. So then I go back and I learn the defensive playbook, get going on that one. Well, then we go to camp, like the first or second day of camp, I made it into the 2 deep on defense again. And that second, third day of camp, the backup tackle does something to his foot where he's going to be out for at least weeks, might the season. I don't remember his injury back then. I'm like, okay, we need to move back to offense for a while. I'm like, what are we doing? So I went back to offense. So at that point in time, I knew both playbooks, right? So I knew the entire offensive playbook, the entire defensive playbook from at least the standpoint of offensive line, defensive line, and what they had to be in control of. Well, there's one day in practice, they're like, hey, we need you to kind of suit up for this special drill. And it was a goal line drill. So it was like 12 plays. And I did 4 plays on offense, 4 plays on defense, 4 plays on offense, playing all of those positions. And I remember talking to Casey and I'm like, this is insane. Like, this cannot be sustainable. Well, then the last preseason game of the year, I don't remember which side, but I played offense one half and defense the other half. And came back, thought I was going to get cut. ended up going into that season. They moved me back to defense. And so it was just this constant back and forth of just trying to figure out what's going on. But it was the same thing. You say like, all right, looking like I can control. And eventually your body just can't keep up with that kind of transition. And I think it was a shoulder injury that finally was like, all right, I've had enough. And then got released. And then it was, okay, on to the next phase and figure out what's next after a couple cleanup surgeries so that I could function again.
Yeah. And I want to get into that. Because again, when we talk, I think your NFL and football days is about 2%, maybe 1%, maybe 0% of our conversation, because you're pretty humble about it. You really don't talk much about it. You don't, I always said, if I had your resume, I could move mountains, and you really kind of don't even think about it. But, you made a comment to me one time. You're fortunate enough to have scored a touchdown in the NFL. Not all linemen can say that, but yet you told me that really wasn't really one of your more defining moments. I mean, it wasn't something you really think about. Can you tell me a little bit about that, if you even remember that conversation?
Well, for starters, the funny part is if we had instant replay back then, all my friends, including a guy that I've got to know over in Austin, Jay, he consistently reminds me, he's like, I don't think you were in. But I've got the ball somewhere. It's not in here. I think it's in storage. But yes, it was still counted. And back then it counted. But I don't know. I think when I got done playing, it was so much of like, okay, NFL guys deal with this all the time. Baseball guys do this all the time. NBA guys, you spend so much time focused on being the best at that you don't even really explore what else you're good at or what you're supposed to be doing. And so I was like, I'm going to pull the ripcord. And so it was rough. So when I got done, I didn't want to talk about it at all. Right. So looking back at it now, being able to like change positions and do that and adapt and still have an impact on my team and fill the gaps that were necessary. Like that's the stuff that I'm probably most proud of from the time frame. And it was one of those that if I wouldn't have moved to offensive line when Denny asked me to back in the day, looking back at it, the whole landscape of defensive line and type of players was different. I mean, I was a big run stopping defensive end when all of a sudden everybody wanted Dwight Freeney, right? Which for whoever's listening that doesn't know Dwight Freeney, he's all pro. I think if he's not in Hall of Fame, he's going to be. I mean, the guy was absolutely phenomenal, but everybody wanted speed guys and I wasn't a speed guy. Right. So then being able to move and adapt and take on those different challenges was easily probably the part that I'm most proud of from that time frame. But then, I mean, sticking around for 8 years, the more I look back at that, and not many people do that. Right. Everybody hears the Tom Brady who played for 20 stinking years or whatever it was, but most guys don't last 3 years. Right. So to get 8 years in and solid career, I think it's something I look back at now and it's pretty exciting.
No, you had a good run. You had an excellent run. And, like we said, it kind of paved the way because you had some big decisions to make. You finished the NFL. And now what took you to the next season of your life?
Well, Casey and I had decided we'd move back to Illinois, right? So we bought that house when we went to Oakland, actually. We were like, hey, we need a home base. We don't know. Because a lot of guys turn into people who bounce, right? Once you leave that first team, you're kind of going from spot to spot to spot, kind of keeping going and trying to figure out kind of how long you can stick around. 2 years of having injuries in a row, even though the Raiders did call me that third year to see if I'd come back. Like we just decided, as a family, like the best move was like move on, retire, take some time to heal, figure out what's next. And so then, I mean, this was another one of those time frames where people started leaning into me. And so I was just trying to take it in as much as possible. So we moved back to Champaign. Brian and Kelly McClure became very, very good friends of ours very quickly. Kelly was a volleyball player at Illinois and BMAC was a baseball player. They were a few years older than we were. And he was at Northwestern Mutual and he just started, hey, this is what we do. And kind of got us introduced. I'm like, all right, I can't sit there retired. After about 10 months, I was super bored of just sitting around. And so just immediately dove into the business world, working with Northwestern Mutual and then trying to figure out kind of what step that was going to lead me towards.
Yeah. So you went through that, but you also went back and you got your master's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the quick thing I learned at Northwestern Mutual was all those guys that are golfing and traveling all the time, that takes like 5 to 10 years to get to that. You can't do that in week one. And so still went through it. I lasted about 2 years over there, but in that time frame, I mean, BMAC and I talk about this all the time. I just wasn't designed for that, right? Having the same conversation every day got monotonous pretty quickly. I had a couple of the people I kept talking to and getting to know, and a bunch of them like, with your kind of how you see things, you need to go get an MBA. And so did the executive MBA program at the University of Illinois, which now is part of, like most different universities, part of an online program. But I was able to drive up to Chicago every other weekend, work with high-level executives and kind of really immerse myself. And out of the gate, I'm like, wow, this is fun. And just really leaned into kind of learning more about businesses. I mean, in a very odd way, I really enjoyed the case study part of it, right? And understanding all these different companies, and every time you learn about a different group and how they were formed, really interested me. And so it kind of sent me down this journey to start figuring out what that next path is going to look like.
So we talk about failing forward. You had a few unfortunate situations probably there, maybe in the first 4 or 5 years. What's your biggest takeaway? What did you learn from some of these failures?
It's exactly what you just said, though. You have to learn from, right? It's if you're not out there and you're not really trying to take that next step or that next level or grow in any manner, you're not going to learn anything. You're going to just stay stagnant. Just like when we talked about this beginning of this conversation, it's the same thing as being an athlete, right? I had those people early on, like if you're not getting better each day and figuring out what's going to happen, people pass you up, right? That happens in athletics, that happens in life, that happens in business. And so with each of those different moments, it was like in the moment, there's a lot of freaking pain that you're trying to navigate. But it eventually, when you look back, a lot of those mistakes or learning experiences, what I usually call them now, are what my clients now value the most. I've seen those. I've been through those. I've seen clients try different things. I've tried different things. And so those different kind of missteps or wrong decisions really shape on kind of how you're able to kind of navigate things moving forward. Now, for someone who doesn't learn from those mistakes, that's a different situation, right? But I've always been someone that really good at learning from my mistakes, to the point where that's probably a downfall in my NFL years. I was more worried about the 2 mistakes I made instead of the 35 great plays I made in a game, but it's how I was designed.
So we'll kind of fast forward here a little bit, but you've got your own company now, CEO of a great company. Tell us a little bit about what you do today and how you interact with leadership, and how maybe some of this past is kind of coming full circle and playing into your consulting business today.
Right. So eventually was driven back out here to Phoenix, right? After I got done with my MBA program, really started to explore things. And you stay in Champaign, you're at the university, the bank, or the hospital, right? And I'm like, okay, I want to work more with smaller businesses. Came back out to Phoenix, dove into multiple different industries: cybersecurity, technology, manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, fundraising, you name it. Kind of just kept dabbling in different areas across all disciplines. I think 5 years ago now, probably is when it was, when all of a sudden I was like, man, God, what is going on? There is no linear path here that I can see in terms of industry specific or role specific. And finally I had that moment where God was like, that's why. Right? You have such a general knowledge across so many disciplines. It really helps other companies figure out how to solve their problems. Immediately, shortly after that time, went into 2 or 3 different companies at once, sitting in kind of a fractional COO type role. Introduced myself, or was introduced somewhat, to this whole EOS concept of traction and how to design meetings and structures and flows, and took that and learn more in terms of like scaling up and all these just different tools, and started to work on, okay, well, how do I deploy these in different companies? And then about 2.5 years ago, got to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this by myself. It's very limiting. I think that was about the time you and I started talking about who, not how, and all these just different other concepts on how to really expand and grow yourself. And was introduced to my business partner, Tim. So Tim and I started working together probably close to 2 years ago now. He's out here in Phoenix, similar beliefs. The thing I think we hit it off the most was that we were both doing similar things, but we'd also had very similar learning experiences, like I learned earlier, where they had bad experience with business partners or businesses that had failed or just never really took off. And so we really hit it off in that aspect. And so then he became the first who that I really leaned into from a business standpoint. Brought him on, and now he runs everything, kind of hiring and managing kind of the backflow, a couple of the different client engagements, and it started to really take off. And so now we work with 10 different clients across the country, got room to take on 3 or 4 more here in the next few months. And we really focus on helping those business leaders solve their complex people and process issues. They all get to this spot where, all right, we've got to this level. I don't understand what's next, or this isn't working, or this person's not working. And so we get in there usually we don't like to use the term fractional. We kind of use this business catalyst idea. We sit and work with them to kind of shape their meetings, shape their teams, but ultimately design something that works for them, right? I mean, there's this whole concept that everybody should do things this way and this is how it works, but it really depends on that leader, right? And how they're designed and how they want to run the business and how do you design that model to work with them. So we've leaned into that, really enjoying it, really resonating well with different companies. And now it's funny, we're trying to figure out how to expand us like we expand other companies right now.
So what's a common theme that you're seeing from all the clients that you have? Because they obviously bring you in because something's not right, that they need
Mhm.
something fixed. What's a common theme in leadership that you see that you're able to come in and you and Tim are able to apply your magic trick and help them?
One of the things that, and this is such a cliche business term, I feel like anymore, but these people have gotten so absorbed into their business, they don't know how to get out of the business to fix their problems, right? So they're leaning too much in the operational side and they shouldn't even be in the operational side. Or they're so involved in the sales cycle, they don't even know what sales looks like without them leading it, right? And so we do a really good job of pulling them out of the business, at least long enough that we can see, okay, this is the path we're going to have to get to. This is the type of person we got to bring in. This is the structures we have to put in place. A lot of times it's how they're going to market. And so we have to redesign how they kind of go to market before we can even bring people in to run it. And so it really varies, but ultimately they've gotten so far in the weeds and they've just started trying different things that they can't even tell if something's working or not. And so often it's got to be like, all right, you've been trying all of this. This is why this isn't working. And more often than not, it's just because they don't have the right person to execute whatever they're trying to do in between, or they also don't have someone in there that can tell them no when it's not the right path. Yeah.
Mm. So your leadership style, what's your magic trick, Fred? What is it that you do that to you, it's like, I think everybody does it, but to me and to everybody else, it's like, doggone it, I wish I had what Fred has. What's your magic trick? What is it that you bring to the table that very few people do?
I am really good at getting to know what that owner or that leadership team is trying to accomplish and seeing those different gaps, but even more importantly, getting them on board to know what needs to happen. Right. And so you sit down with these leaders and you really start to understand what they've tried and why it's not working, but then also be able to show them that path. And so I always think about this. My goal in life is to equip, but also empower leaders so they can scale their businesses, so they can have that impactful growth that they want to have. Right. Sometimes they want to sell it. Sometimes they want to have this great company they'd leave as a legacy. Other times they just want to grow a great company. I mean, we've got 2 or 3 people that they don't even know what they want to do with it. They just want to grow a great company. They can have impact on great people. And so once we know that path and we know what they're leaning towards, it really, really makes a difference in terms of designing what's right for them.
So you and I kind of geek out over psychometric assessments and stuff like
Yeah.
that. What's tell me about where you kind of land on these assessments and kind of how you use them in your consulting.
Well, personally, I feel like you and I've talked about this. We use all of them. I think all of them are good and have their space in terms of how you're able to understand yourself and your skills. I still think I'm learning more and more about my strength finders as we have explored this over. I mean, you and I have been talking strength finders now for like 4 or 5 years. I feel like the one that we use consistently, and we're actually a client of theirs, and we always push our clients to be is culture index. I mean, it's an assessment we use. It takes about 10 minutes, really gives us a clear picture on kind of what the person's designed for. But I think Tim and I's skills when we get into these different companies and what we're training some of our new team members to do is you still have to get to know the person, right? Some of these people have so many years experience in these different fields and know what they need to be doing. It's just often they are distracted by what they think they're supposed to be doing versus what they want to be doing. Right. And this is the stuff you and I keep talking about and trying to figure out how to get you more and more involved with some of these leaders that we're dealing with. It's like, how do you really break down that person to like what they say they want to be doing and what they actually are designed to do? Right. And trying to figure out and bridge that gap. And so that's the next evolution of figuring out how to really have impact with these different groups. And you and I've talked about this a lot. A lot of times you get out with these different groups, and when you start laying it out what the company needs, some people get really excited about it, and others realize, okay, I don't fit here. You know, where do I fit? Is it in the company? Do I need to move on? And those are the type of conversations we're starting to have with some of these different groups.
Yeah, you and I have been able to work with a common client out of Chicago that,
Hmm.
you've been able to come in and introduce, this culture index. And I've been able to use elements of strength finders, something I call the genius spark, and then the Enneagram. And
Hmm.
in fact, as you mentioned a while ago, we were talking the other day about your Enneagram, and it's what you're born with. It's your DNA. You said that you didn't like to be controlled, and that kinda goes back to I think you are an Enneagram 8, my friend. That is
Well,
classic Enneagram 8.
well, in typical fashion, I came back, started talking to Casey about this, and I'm like, all right, I'm trying to figure this part out. And then as we kind of get going into it, and then I bounce it off Tim, my business partner, and he's like, I could see moments of a 3. He's like, but everything you do is designed and functions around an 8. And so it does. It is. And that one's, I mean, you and I've talked about to this day, that tool alone is probably the one that kind of really helped shape me on a path. I mean, what did we talk about this like 8 years ago when we first started exploring Enneagram and the impact
Yeah.
it can have? And you've gone 10 layers deeper than I ever could have imagined. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to have it fit both client wise and as I work with different groups, but it is that one at a core has had a serious impact on me and kind of how I view different things and kind of what direction I should be going.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, and so, like I say, to me, it's a 1-2 punch. By the time, we do the Enneagram and then we do the strength finders, we're able to really go deep, and then, of course, now I'm able to, involve my friends, with artificial intelligence,
Oh yeah.
Grok and Claude and ChatGPT, and they can even take it, in multiple layers. So, w we've talked a little bit about faith.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit, how has faith played a role in your life, your career, everything? When did you find it? How do you define your faith, Fred?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. That last way you shaped it. Let's start this way. I was introduced to God at an early age, right? Started in the Catholic Church world and didn't really understand what that meant. But again, in this typical theme of having great people lean into you at certain times, I was introduced to the first Christian church in Tuscola and had a youth pastor, Danny Maxheimer, who reached out and really leaned into me in that time frame, helped me understand what it looked like to have a relationship with God and the impact that can have. And then that theme just kind of continued throughout, right? Obviously, you go to college, and I can't say that I was going to church consistently in college, right? Everybody kind of goes through that path, I think. But then as Casey and I's life and relationship really grew, she early on became that foundational rock in terms of our faith and what needed to be happening. So, I mean, we came out here to Phoenix, immediately were involved in a church, moved back to Champaign. And that was just always that theme. Like we wanted to be involved and we know the impact that God could have in our life. And we look back, and even though we've had challenges like everybody else has, we have lived a very, very blessed life. And we know that's God's hand on us. And so the more we can take that and have that impact on others, and it's exponential. And so I'm not someone that go into different companies or work with different clients and I'm shoving it down their throat. But my hope is that how I treat people and how I handle conversations and how I want to mentor and shepherd these people to become great leaders and great people in their business. My hope is that shines through and we have the ability to share more as we go.
Yeah, and you've worked with a few companies that, I forget the term, but basically there's a bottom line amount that goes to either Christian related. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but basically they donate a certain portion, maybe it's 10% of in
Yeah.
addition to their bottom line. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there are some groups that have tithing aspects to their companies. Others, I mean, I was very, very blessed to work with a company based out of Austin for a couple of years, and faith is at the foundation of their mission, vision, and values, how they hire people, how they handle things in the community, what they do in the community. And when you can find those companies, it just makes work more fun. I mean, it is. And fortunately, we have at least 6 clients right now that all fall in that either faith forward or faith as their foundation type companies where it's super important to them. And they see it's this business as a ministry, right? And this is how they reach people and how they're able to impact different groups. And so when you can find those different companies, it just adds a different layer to the value that we can add, but then also the enjoyment we get from working with those different groups.
Wow.
It's
So
fun.
we'll,
Yeah, we've been blessed.
you have been. In fact, just before we finish up here, a quick shout out on, like I say, I know that we both married up, but you got 3 kids that are crushing it too.
Yeah.
Any comments there?
No, they're doing great. It's funny. My son has found his path. I mean, it's funny how different we are. He loves to build things, but he likes to build them with his hands. And so has found his kind of passion working in helicopters and jets. And so he's getting certifications to work on aircraft and is finishing that up in about a month. And then he gets into more training and certifications, and then we'll be launching into the real world soon. And so it's exciting for him. I got my daughter Carly is in studying at U of A, but she's actually doing our study abroad program. Crazy proud of her for that. Just over the years, never thought she would be one to jump out and do that. So I'm just super excited she's experiencing doing that. And then we're close to being empty nester. So the last one's a senior. She's going to play beach volleyball next year at Concordia University in Irvine, and just she's a lot of fun to chase. I mean, I've joked with you, of all the sports we've been in, beach volleyball, Dad, is my favorite. Tournaments are like Huntington Beach, Hermosa, places like that. We're going to Gulf Shores kind of around Easter to see a volleyball tournament with her. And so those are good ones. When you can go instead of being in the convention center and have your feet in the sand, that is my kind of tournament. So
and the sunglasses have got to be cool, man. I mean, you're seeing all the best sunglasses and
she's went from pit vipers to Oakleys. And then Casey, and Casey's crushing it too. I mean, as an artist, she's grown a ton over the past few years. I know you see her stuff consistently, but she's leaned in more and more too, working with the group that she trained with. And she's actually mentoring multiple students and actually starting to manage the other mentors and just leaning in really hard to help those different groups of people. So it's been good.
So if there are already art listeners out there, reach out to Fred, because I think, again, the work that Casey does is phenomenal. I've went to a few of her showings and she does just an amazing job. And of course, Fred, just this relationship that we've had, my friend, for, I guess that's going on almost 7 years, has been, again,
hilarious.
It's been a God thing. Again, I guess we chalk it up to God, not the fact that we're both 6'6", 6'7", and we needed exit row seats. And so we were almost forced to sit next to each other, I think, on that airplane. But you were wearing an Illinois hat. I was wearing an Illinois hat. And so anyway, it was God's way of just saying, hey, you two are special, and you need to get to know each other. So anyway, Fred, if people want to get in touch with you, you want to know more about your consulting and how you can help them, where do they go?
Easiest one is Fred at thriveCXO.com. You can message that. We are actually in the process of launching a website. I'm going to say by the end of next month, so I can force Tim to get it done, give him a hard time because he's trying to get that buttoned up on top of managing a couple clients. And the other one is I don't mind people having my phone number, right? I might not answer it right away, but if you leave a message or shoot me a text, more than happy. So 217-419-3191. Always happy to have a conversation and see if we can help or at least point you in the right direction.
Yeah. And you're also on LinkedIn, so they can go out to LinkedIn, look up Fred Wakefield. And so I think in your contacts, you should have probably that information as well. And I really do. I urge you, just give Fred a call, because I tell you what, it'll be worth it in every way, shape, and form. Fred's the real deal, the real dude. And again, between his faith, his business, and his NFL experience, and just his life experience, I've never found a friend that I just appreciate more. So thank you, Fred, for being a guest on the show. If you want to get in touch with me, please do. Please go to StanGibsonSpeaks.com. Again, StanGibsonSpeaks.com. And, get on there. We've got a prompt that will let you get one of my newsletters each week, which I think you'll love. We're crushing it there. And you know what, Fred, thanks for being on the show. Any final comments, my friend?
No, thanks, brother. This has been fun, and I appreciate this. And like I said, look and see how much this thing blows up. This was really, really fun, buddy.
It is. I tell you what, may you all live a rich and intentional life. Take care and have a great week. Bye. Well, that's it for today, my friends. I hope this conversation sparked something meaningful for you. If it did, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration too. You can find more tools, stories, and coaching to support your journey at StanGibsonSpeaks.com.